I'm Kathleen, and Larry and I are here today with Kevin Ferguson. Hey, Kevin.
Hello.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well, all things considered, and I hope you guys are as well.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, we are so excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I was so happy to receive the invitation.
Well, whenever we start one of these, I try to think, when did we actually meet each other? And I don't know, like I always feel like I've known you forever, so I just can't figure it out.
You know, I know the times when I was working primarily at RLT feels like 5 lifetimes ago for me. Like I've had 5 different iterations of whatever I am. I feel like as a person since then. But it couldn't have been too long after I started work. I remember you were very kind. I remember us having a conversation once after a performance of, I believe it was How to Succeed. And you were very kind to me about the way that show was going. And I remember then, and then I think you and I just sort of mind melded as far as like approaches to theater and what our aesthetic was. And we ended up having just sort of one of those relationships you can have with somebody in the arts who sort of, you're kind of having the same wavelength. So you sort of can fall into easy conversations without really knowing that person really well. And then before you know it, you know them pretty well. But you and I haven't really ever worked together. We've just sort of been like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? What's going on? I loved your show. Yeah, that show you directed was amazing. It was that kind of thing. My first, I remember seeing Larry in about 12 shows before I think that, I mean, I had met Larry, I don't remember the exact moment I met Larry, but I got to know Larry pretty well working on a really interesting production of Grapes of Wrath together. And I remember really, like cementing my relationship with Larry working on that show. And I had a couple of scenes with him. And so whenever I do a scene with an actor and I look into their eyes and I feel like they're looking back, I'm like, me and that person are always going to be good. And I remember specifically with Larry, Larry and I had a scene in the back of a truck. That was always one of my favorite scenes. It was a brief scene, but it was always one of my favorite scenes to do on that show every night, because Larry will back me up here, I hope. But like, we did Grapes of Wrath with like 3 weeks of rehearsal. And like, I was often in the wings learning my lines before I went on stage. So anytime I could go on stage and feel like I was in solid footing with me and the other actors around me, were moments that resonated with me. But also it was a good show, but we were also kind of working without a net, all of us, in a way. So it just felt good to go on stage and have that kind of memory with somebody as well. So Larry's like burned in my memory of someone I stood in the back of a truck with and did a scene from Grapes of Wrath with, where I currently work as well. So I think of Larry often, actually.
What I remember about that show, I had not worked with you before. And, I don't know if I can explain all this, but there's 2 types of actors in Raleigh. There's the actors who, there's a natural way they're doing acting, and then there's an actor like how I see you. Like I compare you to Kevin Kline. When you first started doing your scenes, it's like, wow, this guy is at a whole different level. I mean, you had the feelings, but you also had the voice and the technique and the movement of a very professional actor.
Thank you.
Get a lot of good actors who don't have the techniques all the way down. You had it all. So
thanks, man, appreciate it.
Wow.
That show is one of my, that particular production, you have them in your life, but that show is one of my absolute favorite memories of theater. And that's sort of, we're all on the foxhole together and we're somehow pulling off this great script together, even though we all wish we had 3 more weeks of rehearsal. And it's also one of the shows I look back on with the most, like, what if you had asked me to go through that again, I might be like, oh my God, no. But then I don't really regret doing it in any way, shape, or form, because I worked with so many amazing artists on that show too. So
that is so great. That is so when did you first get the acting bug?
The funny that I was reading through your questions, and that's actually one of the harder ones for me to answer, because I don't know that I ever fell in love with acting as much as I fell in love with like the theater. Like I remember falling in love with theater and the idea that I could build my own imaginary world, and that there are creative ways to get a point across, and just 700 people singing together. I just like, and also the sense of community that theater instantly brings. Like when I looked at casts doing shows, I got people doing shows, I was like, I was not wise enough at whatever 13 years old to think this way, but in looking back on it now and trying to talk to my students about it, I think I realized the thing I was most attracted to was like, that's like an instant community and instant family. And there's a lot of people working towards a common goal. And I know now that's why I love doing it more than anything. But like back then, I couldn't have told you that's what resonated to me. I was like, oh, the costumes and the costumes were amazing. You get to wear a tuxedo. But I remember I got a good report card and when I was in 7th grade, and my parents took me in. I grew up in Jersey, and my parents took me for getting a good report card. My parents took me to New York to see a show, and I do know that that's the point where, like, going into the Lincoln Tunnel, I was one person, and coming out of the Lincoln Tunnel, I felt like every molecule in my body had been rearranged. And yeah, I wanted to play like every role in the show, including the women. But I also was like fascinated about how they got the show was called On the 20th Century, and like they had a train on stage, and like just people singing and executing, and Kevin Kline was in the show. It was just one of those, it's just that moment where you're like, oh, well, everything's different now. And I was a pretty hyperactive kid. And I remember my parents, I was sitting in the way back of our station wagon. I remember my parents kept checking in with me, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Because for like one of the only times in their memories, I was being very, very quiet because my brain was in the process of like completely rewiring itself. So that's when I fell in love with theater. I didn't do any theater again didn't do any theater until I was in high school, and that was in junior high. But that's the moment I recall as like, oh, I'm done. This is it. Like, oh, you don't have to be good at sport. You can be a guy and not be good at sports and be part of something and a team and not be. I was like, wow, I might have found my way. None of this made sense to me at the time. I was just like, what just happened? Right. And I lived in that sort of fugue state with theater until I actually started doing it, and then realized, oh, it's not glamorous at all. It's hard work and crazy, but that's part of the lot. Then you learn that's really part of it too.
Well, I've told this to Larry before, but my son is a big, huge sports person and always had been. And he was like on the ECU hockey team, captain, whatever. And I was trying to tell him one day that being an actor was very similar because we had our own team. And he looks at me like, you're comparing hockey to theater?
You never know. You can be rehearsed and have all the great actors, and you don't go out there and you don't know, it might not go great one night. It's just like a sporting event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have a lot. We occasionally will get an athlete participate in one of our shows at Gibbons, and one of the things we consistently get from them when the process is over is, wow, I wish the guys that I work with or the women that I work with on my volleyball team or whatever team they're talking about, I wish they all trusted one another as much as y'all trust one another. And I'm not saying we're all running around the theater department like trusting one another. There's plenty of what goes on in a theater like everywhere else. But that instant sort of, trust and vulnerability that happens, I think really resonates with the kids on the other teams. And I think our best teams at Gibbons are teams that have that sort of sense of community and commitment to being, like, they're not afraid to be vulnerable with one another.
Right. Wow.
What was the first show you were in after high school?
Oh gosh. Let's see. Well, the summer between I graduated high school and went to college, I was in a production of Fiddler on the Roof. I was a dancer, which tells you how long ago that was, and how maybe awful the show was. But there was a place called Theater in the Park in New Jersey, which was this giant outdoor amphitheater in Edison, New Jersey, near my grandmother's house, and they often would get New York actors to come in and play the lead. So it was like a stock repertory house, right. Basically. And they did like 3 or 4 musicals a year each summer, and they were great, like big production values. And that was the first thing I did before I went to college. And it was great because I got to work with like a mix of community theater actors, most of whom were very, very, honestly couldn't tell you the difference between them and the professionals. Well, the professionals carried themselves slightly differently, but, and also people that were doing it for a living. So I did not go to college as a theater major, but it's that was a seminal experience for me because I got exposed to like what professionalism in the theater looked like very early on and how that paid it off, and just a lot of different reasons. Yeah. And also just working with community theater people who were like, probably could have done it, just couldn't afford to. And so we're like dentists and orthodontists and, like worked at the mall, and they were insanely talented people and very professional as well. Cause this particular theater was very professionally run, but they were all like bringing it and doing a really good job. So to get, it's sort of the democratic side of doing good theater, where I was really lucky at a young age to be exposed to as well.
That is so great. Did you have a mentor at any time in your life?
Well, actually, yeah, I've had several. I don't know that the when I was younger, I don't know the two that like we had like what you call a traditional mentor relationship, but I certainly like passive mentorship or like learning and like at college I had a teacher and a director called Dr. Ronald O'Leary, who really taught me a ton about how, you know, passion and talent were great, but he influenced me more as a director than an actor. But he really taught me a lot about like how you had to have a plan and like how much organizational skills and having a strong vision for a production and using that as your guiding principle and really staying true to that, and the role that like just having your crap together when you walk into a room in front of people and are asked to run a room, how important that was. So I had that going for me very early on, which I know early on as a young director with, you know, with some things that I had to grow, like there were a lot of personal things I had to grow up, like we all do, but like, I know that brought me a lot of credibility early on in my directing career because, you know, just having your act together. I don't know that I was the best director, but like knowing what was going on every day in rehearsal and being able to communicate that to everybody allowed some other, you know, brought me a lot of credibility. Whereas in other areas I was probably just, and so it allowed me to be a little more confident when, you know, let's be honest, most of the time when you're doing theater, there's a low simmer of terror. But that sort of gave me something to hang my hat on that wasn't just a 4-alarm fire. And
That
then as I
is
got
really
older,
great.
and then I got older, as I got a little older, I know Haskell was a big mentor to me. Haskell Fitzsimmons, beloved Haskell Fitzsimmons, he taught me a lot about patience and I just feel like Haskell took very good care of me, especially at moments where I may not have earned it or deserved it. And I learned a lot about, and I bring a lot of that. I feel like I bring a lot of that to the classroom where I teach now. And then at Gibbons, this gentleman's not a theater gentleman. He's no longer, he just recently took a different position in California, but Jason Curtis, who was the principal of Cardinal Gibbons High School, has probably been the most direct one-to-one. Jason's about 15 years younger than me, but Jason was a real mentor for me as far as growing my theater program at Gibbons and just teaching me a lot about just about like organization's great, but also going with the flow. I just started being really, really patient with me as I made a lot of mistakes as a person who had never taught high school before, trying to develop a unique model for a high school drama program. He was a real real guiding light and mentor, and like a real great mentorship for me. And the only reason I want to bring that up is because, you know, we often think of mentorship as this wizened older guy or gal, and this naif. And actually, Jason was considerably younger than me, but I learned a lot from him about, you know, not leading with emotion, real leadership skills, and being able to accept criticism in an honest and open way, and not reacting defensively to that and things like. He just taught me a lot about just being a better man, you know, which is
About life.
How can that not make me a better actor, a better teacher, a better director, a better everything, you know, in the theater. So I am very grateful for him for that one especially.
Wow. Well, my next question was going to be, have you ever gotten good advice from anyone? But any specific theater or acting advice you might have gotten?
Well, you know, yes. I think Carmen. You all remember Carmen? Carmen.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You know, she used to say. I remember one point, just a lot of stuff for me. It's sort of it has to catch me when I'm not looking for it, you know. And I remember Carmen saying something to me once, and it took me years before I actually appreciated how valuable it was. And something no one in the theater does, but we all pretend we do, but none of us really do, which is trust the process, you know, like, you know, that was a big one. Trusting the process. I would say that in college, some of the best acting advice I got was stop working so hard. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. Really try listen, and if you listen more, that will solve most of the things that are driving you crazy about this. And then the perpetual one, which is, and this, I know this has been a cliche forever, but I don't know why I've only started listening to it in the last 3 or 4 years, probably because I'm getting old. It's like, man, stop making perfection the enemy of the good. You know, you're just, you know, and just other things you pick up along the way. You're not right for every role, you know? So if you aren't, like, you know what I mean? It's okay to not take a role just to take a break. You know, taking a break from theater can be a good thing. You know, and most advice for me is stuff that people told me. I immediately didn't listen to because I was a hot-headed young Irishman. And then anywhere from 5 to 10 years later went, oh my gosh, if only I had listened to that 5 years ago.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So at some point it penetrates the density and the fog, but
I hear you.
I wouldn't necessarily say that any of the advice I was given resonated in the exact moment in which it was given. Goes back to that, hey, just maybe listen.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting stuff and things pop back in my head. It's like, oh yeah, I remember hearing that. I forgot about that.
Right there with you.
Do you have a favorite theater or film actor?
Yeah. And I think this person is both. It's Jeff Daniels, who I've been lucky enough to see in plays and loved him in movies for years. But then I've been lucky enough to see him in a play or two over the years. Most recently, I saw him in Mockingbird, and I mean that was a heck of a role to take on. And I saw him in the Yasmin Reza play about the two couples in the I can't remember the name of it. Off the top of my head, with Gandolfini, James Gandolfini was in it. You know, I mean, I went to see those plays mostly because he was in it. But I've long admired his work as a film actor since I remember the first time he showed up on my radar was Terms of Endearment, I think, and I've just been.
He's great in that, and
I just think
July on Broadway, and I did the show a few years later in a community theater. A funny story about Jeff Daniels, they asked him to come back and redo the play you're talking about and take the Gandolfini role, right?
Wow. And
he said, let me call Jimmy and ask Jimmy. So he calls Gandolfini and says, hey, they asked me to redo the show to play your role. How do you feel about that? And Gandolfini said, oh, yeah, maybe you can finally get that line I can never get right. It's like, professional actors struggle with lines? It's just not me.
I love that.
Isn't that a great revelation when you realize they're just people and they're up there? You know, I listen to a lot of podcasts with actors now that you can listen to podcasts, right? And like they're all like, oh yeah, I'm scared out of my mind half the time. And I'm like, oh, why would no one in college, when I was in college, ever say fear's a thing? We all feel it. Like it's gonna hold you back, and it's also gonna propel you. But lean into it, man. It's part of it. I wish more people had talked about that.
Well, it's funny you say that because I do say that in my classes when I teach little kids and we get to that final class where their parents are going to show up, and some of them come in and they look like they're just about to be ill. And I'll say, no, everyone is nervous, even people on Broadway. Lots of my actor friends, we're all nervous, you know, so you just try to make them feel like this is,
I can't recall a performance that I've been involved with as an actor, even shows that where I knew were going well, that before every performance, I didn't have that 30-second period of if there was a fire alarm right here, I would pull it right now. Like, I mean, I can't, no matter what level I was performing at, where it was, I always have 30 seconds of, I mean, it used to be much longer. I'm glad it's just that last 30 seconds, got it down to 30 seconds, but it never goes away. It's not even stage fright. I was just like, I would literally rather be doing anything other than what I'm about to do. And then, you know, you break the curtain line and you're like, there we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't like the idea that I sometimes have to wait to feel the audience, you know, and I know Mamet scorns actors like me who say, you can't wait till you get out to the audience to feel if it's going to go good or not, but that's just how I am, you know.
Oh, well, that's Mamet. Okay. How much acting has Mamet done? I love that. You know, I love that he writes these books about acting. And I'm like, I can't remember the last play or film I saw you in, Dave. You know, I read that book and I was like, what is this guy talking about?
I know.
I know. So Kevin, do you have a worst audition story?
That
you want to share?
I don't mind sharing them. I mean, I've just had so many bad auditions at my age that like more than bad than good that they just start to run together. I will say about bad auditions is I cannot stand, I like most actors, I like callbacks because, not because I'm like, oh, probably because I'm on safer ground, but I think callbacks exist more of what I'm there to do, which is to read for the play. But like initial auditioning things are not my favorite thing. And Gibbons, I've toyed with the idea of years is after someone auditions for me once or twice, just letting them come to signing up for a list and letting them come to callbacks. I've worked at several theaters that used to do that. But I think they would, I don't know that in high school I would be anything but burned at effigy if I did that. So I don't really have, like, I never walked out of audition room humiliated. I know I had some specific auditions where I remember towards the time when I was pivoting away from just trying to be an actor and nothing more. I remember a couple of specific auditions that didn't go great. And I started to realize, I think maybe I've lost the thing that's going to keep me wanting to do this, to put food on the table. I think that's gone away because I went through like a month of like having a series of auditions that either left me devastated because I didn't get the part, or even more worse than that, in my opinion, just sort of meh, okay. You know what I mean? Like I kind of enjoy this stable, I'm waiting tables and I'm making a lot of money, and you know what I mean? I'm not worried about when that job's going to end. And I think that's kind of when I realized, yeah, I think maybe it's time to do a little pivot here. So I wish I had like a nightmarish one. I've been fortunate enough never, like, I've had some truly terrible auditions, but mostly just because they're standard garden variety, like forgot my words, just, you know what I mean? Like, but you know, I never soiled myself or threw up, or in some of the really more dangerous ones. You know, I did have an audition where I took a tap dancing class. Didn't mean I could tap dance. I took a tap dancing class. I put that on my resume. And at the audition, I was asked to tap dance. And I was like, moment of truth here. And I was like, I can't. I took a class, so I thought I could put that on my special skills. But I can't. So let's just end the charade right now. Oddly enough, they ended up using me in a different role, but like,
That's great.
but you know, I walked out of that one like, yeah, I'm going to update my resume when I go home tonight.
What is one of your favorite shows you've been in, and why?
It's a great question. I've been lucky to have a lot of really great experiences and not too many terrible ones. I think, okay, so but one of my favorite show that I've been in, there's two of them. They're both Sondheim. My favorite show that I've ever done as an actor was Sunday in the Park with George, which I did right before I moved to Raleigh. And I was the period of my life where I was sort of, Cindy and I were about to get married, and I was just sort of settling into like a normal person's life. And this local theater in the area was doing that show. And I just we had moved back from Florida. I hadn't acted in a while. And so I was like, I just kind of want to do something to keep my blood flowing. I didn't know many people in the area. It's always a good way to do a play. It's a nice way to make some new friends, right? If you move to a new town. And I auditioned for this production of Sunday in the Park with George because it's, you know, it's one of my favorite shows. And I was like, don't give me a small part. Nobody knows me. They'll make me like, I just care. I don't care if I'm just the guy holding the baby in the background and I get to sing that one song. They'll give me somewhere to go, give me a sense of purpose. And these lunatics were like, they gave me George. And I didn't really want that part, but also for like people who are in the musical theater, that's like Hamlet, you know, it's like you don't really turn the opportunity to play that down. And it was a halfway decent theater. I knew they were going to do a good job on the show. So I took it, and it was really challenging and really terrifying, but it ended up being one of the most artistically rewarding experiences of my life. There's a lot going on with that character in me that, like, you know, when you and a character vibe on the same frequency, but you don't ever really think you're going to get a chance to play that role, and you get a chance to do it. It's a gift. So that was one of those. It was just really terrifying and also gratifying at the same time. And it was a very good show. The director did a really nice job with it. But then my favorite show, if I have to be honest, like in my life, I have had a really, not even complicated, I have had a lovely lifelong relationship with the show Into the Woods. I've done it 3 different times. Wow. And I played the Baker twice, which is one of my favorite roles. And I played the Baker at role points in my life where my life was transitioning. And for me, the Baker's a role. It's like, what does it mean to be like, how do you define what being a good member of society is, and specifically, what does being a good man and father look like? And the first time I had done that, I had met the woman I was eventually going to marry. The second time I did the show, Cindy was pregnant with Katie, so that was heavy. And then the third time I did it at Gibbons in a way that I had a really deconstructed version that I really always wanted to direct the show in a really deconstructed way. It was one of the, you know, as a director, especially in high school, you're often like, I got 8 weeks and for 2 hours a day. So, hey, YouTube, what do you got for me as far as figuring this number out? So it's one of the first things musicals I've directed at Gibbons, which was wholly original. And my daughter, Katie, was the baker's wife. And we set it in a classroom. And so the teacher, and I was the teacher, I got to play the narrator. I didn't play the mysterious man, I just played the narrator. So I got to do it with my daughter and a bunch of students that it was an especially wonderful group of actor students that I was very, very close to. So that show has sort of followed me along at different mile markers in my life and been there. And every time I do it, it just sort of, like any good piece of art, it grows with you and different things. You're like, oh, what I thought this show was about when I saw it when I was 19,
Right.
and I just really like the genius of what's going on in that show. Really, just if you are blessed enough to get to do a show that much, and you still love it. So that's a very long answer to your question.
Is there another role you've always wanted to play?
Yeah, John Adams in 1776.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd also like to just be in a really good Shakespeare production before I die. I don't care what part or what role. I love Shakespeare. And I'd like to be in a really good anything and just like feel like I did a good job with it. But yeah, John Adams in 17, for somebody who's known for like a musical guy. As far as plays go, anything, man. I love doing plays and just ended up doing more musicals than plays in my life. But yeah, for the role that I haven't had any chance to take, I haven't had any opportunities for play, I'd say John Adams in 1776.
You touched on this a little bit before, but when you're on stage as an actor, what do you hope the other actor on stage with you is like? What is your, like, the best scenario to have?
I hope it's somebody that, like I was talking about earlier, that scene from Larry that often comes back is that they're present and they're there with me and that I can trust them and count on them. So I guess the short answer would be I enjoy working with unselfish actors. And I like working with people that like acting because they like acting. They like the job and the craft of acting and don't really care about much beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, we have a job to do in this scene, so let's do it. And it doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of fun, but like, let's both do our thing. But also, are you there? Like, are you there present? And just like you guys asked one of the questions, like, what is the funniest thing that ever happened to you? Or like, if something goes wrong here, we got this. Like, we're not there. Things are going to go wrong. And that's an opportunity, not a liability, you know? So that's why really that's what I most like to look for, is people who know how to just sort of roll with things, and you can settle into a timing rhythm, especially with comedies and things like that, you know?
We all have best moments on stage, and you've told us a few. Do you have just a great moment, another great moment?
Yeah, I like what a great moment for me, and this is sort of like that heroin high that we all chase as actors, is when those moments happen, and they don't happen that much, where you're like, you disappear and like, you know, everything you're worried about in the next line or it all just goes away. But in that production of Sunday in the Park with George, there was a particular song that was so fast and so technically specific, and I rehearsed it, and there was I remember one specific performance where I knew it so well that I couldn't think. I just had to do it. And I remember a performance where I was painting and singing. There was a lot of stagecraft to play, and there was a lot of lyrics and a lot of Sondheim. And I just remember, like, it's one of those rare moments where for about 30 seconds or so, like everything goes away and you're just in the zone and it's just happening. And it transcends everything, you know, and it's something you chase a great deal. And I really admire actors who know how to live in that space. I can't. I think I'm too controlling, trying to control the process often too much to let that happen. But that was a particular moment that resonates for me. And then also just, you know, when you're on stage with somebody and a laugh goes right, or something that's never happened before happens, and you and that other actor make eye contact, and you both get that little twinkle in your eye, and you're both like, all right. But you're also able to stay in character. Like, you can have that moment as Kevin and Larry, Kevin and Kathleen, Larry and Kevin. We have that moment together, but we're also able to keep going. Those are really those happen a lot. Those aren't nearly as rare as those transcendent moments, but I really love those too, where you're able to make like a genuine human connection while you're pretending to be somebody else. I think it's pretty cool.
It's hard to explain that to non-actors, though.
Yes.
Yeah, the last time I acted was Hairspray at RLT, and Tony Hefner and I had several moments like that on stage. So that was a real thrill to go on stage. And Tony and I have worked together a lot, so I think there's some years of trust there. But like, it was really lovely to go on stage every night and have those, like, at least usually once a performance, he and I had a moment where we were both like, "Is this happening?" And still keep going. It was really nice.
That was a very funny show.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that show. Once we got it open, man, that just, there's something, you don't know, sort of, people forget that, like, joy is a viable option for people to feel on an ongoing basis. And Hairspray gave that to those of us in it and those of us who were off stage, those of us in it and those of us who were watching it too. And boy, that you don't get that as much. And that was a lovely experience.
Right. What's the funniest thing that went wrong on stage for you?
Too many to name.
I
tried to find one specific, but the thing about like when things go wrong on stage, the best part of it is like getting out of it. Like when something weird or crazy or funny happens, is how do I do my job and still get out of it? So like there have been things, but they don't resonate for me or stick to my memory nearly as much as like those moments of when you get off stage and get back in the dressing room or in the hallway with the other actor and you're like, what? You know what I mean? And nobody knew anything but you and the actor. Sort of that connection thing. Those are the moments that stick out to me as far as that regard. But I don't have a specific memory of it.
Well, Kathleen, I've told you the story, but Kevin was in, and we did Grapes of Wrath. It wasn't his scene, but it was a scene between Susanna Huff and Sean. And the truck was on a turntable and Thomas Mooney was directing it. And we had no back crew. So my responsibility when I wasn't on stage was to turn the table, move the truck. Well, one night I moved it completely 180 degrees in the wrong direction. And the back of the truck was facing the audience.
Oh.
And Sean just got out of the truck in character, came back and pushed the turntable back around and faced the audience and did the scene.
Thank God.
And that's why I'd rather be on stage.
Yeah.
Now, if you couldn't be an actor or a director, what's something else you'd want to do in the theater arts?
Oh boy, I am one of those people that the cliche is true. I don't know that I chose theater as much as theater chose me, because I tried to do other things and I always, you know what I mean, like the North Star just keeps pulling you back. Honestly, I don't know what else I do other than like settle into now that I'm a little bit older, settle into sort of like a comfortable, quiet life. Yeah. But I kind of have the job that I'm doing, which is I feel like I'd probably be an educator, because very late in life I came to the realization that I always enjoyed young people, but I've like genuinely enjoy working with a specific like high school students. I really enjoy doing that, and so I don't really imagine myself doing anything beyond that, because it allows me to do theater with people at a really good age, and they bring a lot less baggage. It has its own challenges, but they'll follow you anywhere. And so, the tricky part of that is learning how to manage that responsibly, which doesn't happen overnight, but to have a place where Gibbons is very much a culture of learn by failing. You fail up at Gibbons. And so being able to land somewhere that allows me to sort of run my own little theater company with an ever evolving group of actors, I don't know that I could ask for more. And I don't know what else. Like, I also like stand-up comedy, and I hear a lot of stand-up comics go, by when I was 40, I was like, it's this or nothing. So I got to keep going because I can't do anything else. And I think I'm sort of at that point in my life where I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be an English teacher or something, though, something that had a little bit of showmanship to it and allowed a little bit of personality and like performative aspect to it in the classroom. I'd probably be an English or a history teacher, I think, because I was, those are two subjects that I enjoyed in school. But I've tried on other hats, and they've been good financially, but they haven't been really that they didn't really provide a lot of purpose or nourishment. And I come late in life, we came to realize that that's kind of what I needed to keep going.
Well, the students at Gibbons are extremely blessed to have you, because, you're an amazing role model, but you also have a lot of experience. So you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Thank you for that. That's very nice.
But it's true. Yeah.
Now, if you could go back in time and talk to the younger version of yourself when you first started acting, what would you tell yourself?
Okay, so I would tell them, stop making everything harder than it needs to be. Like I said earlier, listening is 90% of the job. Stop this. It's never going to be perfect. So forgive yourself and others along the way. Right. You'll go a lot farther, because once you start forgiving yourself, then you'll figure out how to forgive others. And then the third part of it is the fear thing. Dude, fear is part of it. And it's going to keep you from doing things you want to do. It's going to keep people from seeing who you really are. It's going to throw up. Fear is all about building roadblocks. And as I've gotten older and learned how to share the fear with more people and let more people in, I have changed and grown appreciably. I hope anyway, at least my wife tells me I have, and I trust her because she's she's had to deal with it. But I know I've changed and grown appreciably as a person, and how can that not affect you as an actor and a director and someone who's asked to be serving an artistic leadership position? So like, don't be so afraid, like acknowledge fear. Don't spend less time trying to make fear go away and more acknowledging that that's what's causing it, so that you can maybe work around it or incorporate it or whatever people do with fear, you know? I know that sounds like
want that to be
therapy, but it's true.
I want that to be a bumper sticker. I love that. Share the fear. I like that because it's true. You're right. If we told each other, you know.
Yeah, anything, because, you know, what all fear does is make you build up a false sense of ego to protect yourself, you know, and it keeps you from letting people in. It keeps and it just, none of that's good for you. None of that's good for you. And if it's not good for you as a person, it's not going to be good for you as an actor or even a director, you know, like failure's okay. Okay.
The fear of being a judge, you know, I used to think that when I was younger, I said, I'd rather just have audience members who are not actors. Because I was more afraid of other actors judging my performance. And that's just not healthy to do that.
No,
it's not at all. Especially considering once we all do it, we all go, like when you're up there doing, it's like, why would I ever judge anyone? This is the most terrifying thing in the world to do. But you know, I have done it. And then I sit in the audience and it's like, oh, not the choice I would have made. I am so glad I'm at a point in my life where I don't do that anymore. I'm just like I've learned, I've failed so much, and nothing will make you fail more and humble you more than being a high school drama teacher, you know, because those kids are giving you all their trust. And so if you've got demons and stuff, you're going to screw up sometimes, and their capacity for forgiveness and redemption, if you'll just cop to it, is breathtaking. And I just wish I had that knowledge in my head because I stopped going to the theater for a while because I couldn't have fun anymore. I was being I thought it was theater's fault, but I was being such a butt munch about everything, and that was all because of fear. It was all fear. It was either jealousy, misdirected jealousy, which is fear, you know. It was just keeping me from being a better person, and also just enjoying something that I love so much. And I was like, well, this isn't anybody's fault but yours. You're a schmuck. Stop being afraid of everything. And look, I haven't fixed it, but at least now that I know that's the kind of person I am, I can dial it back a little.
It took me a few years to realize that certain actors, arrogant actors or diva actors, they might just be as afraid as I am. I just let everybody know how afraid I am, and they just cover up, like you said, the other way around, you know.
Yeah, it's exactly. Yep.
It's very true.
Right. And being able to bring that forgiveness and that patience into a rehearsal room is maybe the greatest gift of all. You know, it's just a shame we all got to turn like 40 or 50 before we get enough life experience and ability to go, oh yeah, because you know, up until you're like 35, you are like you're being judged all the time. So how can you not be all like, let's go, you know?
I know.
Right.
And that's not going to make you do your best work. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
You mentioned a little bit before we started recording. What's the first thing you want to do when we get through this epidemic and we can go out and socialize and do theater again? What do you want to do?
Well, my daughter is in college now, and so I've sort of been allowed to readjust my priorities at work. So there's two things I want to do. The first thing I want to do as a human being is just go out and have a nice meal with my wife out in public and drink a beer and see people socializing in a noisy restaurant again, because I feel like that's one of life's great gifts that we all just took for granted.
Yes.
The second is I want to do a play, because I haven't acted since I'm 55. I'll be 56 in November, and I haven't acted since I was turned 50 when I did Hairspray. So I haven't done anything in that amount. I did that production of Into the Woods at Gibbons, but that doesn't count. You can put yourself in a show when you're the teacher and a director, but that's not the same as acting. I was never present at all. I was just saying lines and being like, what's going to go wrong next? Because, you know, that was a thing. But I am like, you know, when Kathleen reached out to me with that, I think it was the HBO thing, I was like, hey, I know you got that group. And Tracy Phillips, who is a very good friend of mine, is always after me to go down there and work. And Kathleen's been kind enough to call me up and ask me to audition several times. And I want to, but my schedule just didn't allow it. But I sort of rearranged my life because I miss acting. And not because I miss acting. I don't need to I miss like being with a group of people and doing, I miss doing the thing. All that stuff we just talked about. I haven't looked another adult in the eyes and had that thing happen in a really long time. And I really kind of miss it. And I also I want to work and now that I'm like, I feel like, you know, like I've grown up a lot. I mean, you can keep growing. I feel like I've grown up a lot in my 50s. you know what I mean, bring some of this newfound wisdom into the room and see how it impacts my work.
I know.
Now that I'm not like so hung up about all the BS I used to get all super hung up on. And so.
Well, I know in my classes, I always have a question of the day. And one of the questions I ask is, what would be the worst punishment for you? You know, and these are kids like taking away my cell phone or whatever, you know, but I always say never being able to do theater again would be the, you know, biggest.
Yeah, that's mine too. It's like
Yeah.
this, you know, I know we have to put rose-colored glasses on in a way to just sort of get through it, but the reality of this is sobering. And it's also kind of a giant reset button, and I'm hopeful that it serves as a reset button in the good ways, not the bad ways. Like, you know, like, and you know, I think we all know what that means. But yeah, I agree with you. That's like the worst nightmare for me would be like,
Right.
no more having to act on Zoom cameras. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna act, man. That's not gonna happen to me.
One of my mentors when I first started going to college, he taught theater in high school. And I agreed with him at the time when he told me that. I don't now. He said that he would tell the students who auditioned for his high school acting class, like, if I want to do a tech rehearsal on prom night, I expect you to cancel prom night and come to a tech rehearsal. And I remember the time thinking like, yeah, I would. But as I got older, I was like, no, you don't make them miss prom night for for a dress rehearsal, you know?
That's
like
great.
theater already makes you miss so many seminal moments in your lifetime if you commit to it. Why would you do that to kids? I mean, I also think, Larry, you're right. In high school and college and even early 30s, me might have been like, damn right I would.
When I was doing theater in Wilmington, we knew the other actors because none of us had suntans because we were all doing theater in the
Oh.
That is so true.
Oh my God.
I know.
Yes.
Anytime anybody in my family talks about an event and I don't remember it, they always go, oh, you were in a show or you were working on a show.
Yeah.
But it's true.
I've gotten a little bit better now where someone said, hey, you want to take vacation or you have a conference coming up? It's like, okay, what shows can I not do?
Yeah. I remember that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. This has been a blast. It's really great to see you, even if on camera. I miss you. It's really been too long. So I hope we can get that beer together, all three of us one day.
Do it.
Right? Yeah.
Do it. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I have anything that allows me to have when you guys ask me to do this, is like contact with two people that I don't see every day, or
I know.
Yes. Whatever you want to talk about, I don't care.
Well, Kathleen knows I can never stop talking about theater, so the passion.
Yeah, we're the perfect people.
And it's also good to see you, Larry.
It's good. I know.
Thanks. It's been a while. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, I think we hadn't had a really good talk since Grapes of Wrath. Maybe in the
my second year at Gibbons, so it's been a while.
Wow. That's so great. Well, thank you again, Larry.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.